The Roman Empire was a giant that seemed impossible to stop. Its armies were disciplined, its strategies unmatched, and its reach spread across continents. From the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Germania, Rome planted its banner and demanded obedience. To many, Rome was invincible, a force ordained by the gods to rule the known world. But history is never that simple, and even the strongest empires find themselves facing resistance they could never have predicted. There were moments when the seemingly unshakable walls of Roman power trembled, when ordinary people rose in defiance, and when resistance burned so fiercely that it scarred the empire forever. One of these moments came when Rome encountered opposition so raw and unyielding that it could not be erased from memory. This is the story of when Rome met its darkest resistance. In the early years of Rome's expansion, the empire seemed unstoppable. Its legions marched in perfect formation, their shields gleaming under the sun, their spears and swords striking fear into the hearts of those who opposed them. Villages were razed, kingdoms crushed, and kings forced to kneel before Roman governors. The Senate and later the emperors believed that no power on earth could rival the discipline of their armies. Yet beneath the surface of this dominance, resentment simmered. The conquered peoples bore their burdens in silence, their culture suppressed, their wealth drained, and their dignity stripped. Rome was mighty, but its brutality was also its greatest weakness. For human beings can only endure so much before their spirit breaks free in rebellion. One of the most haunting episodes of resistance rose from the misty lands of Britannia, where the Celtic tribes lived fiercely independent lives. They cherished their customs, honored their gods, and defended their families with everything they had. To Rome, Britannia was another province to subdue, another land to plunder. The Romans underestimated the fire that burned in those who refused to bow. Among them was a woman whose name would echo through history. Boudica. She was not a general in the Roman sense, nor a queen with vast armies at her command. But she became something far more dangerous, an idea of freedom embodied in flesh and blood. When Rome violated her family, humiliated her people, and sought to grind her into submission, Boudica rose like a storm. Her story was drenched in blood and sorrow. Her husband, the Celtic king allied with Rome, died and left his lands to both his daughters and Rome, hoping to keep peace. But Rome did not honor his will. Instead, they seized the land, flogged Boudica in public, and assaulted her daughters before her eyes. It was cruelty so vile that it ignited a fire within her, a fury that would consume entire Roman settlements. She became more than a woman. She became a rallying cry. Tribes that had long quarreled with each other united under her banner. She promised vengeance, and vengeance they delivered. Roman towns were burned, soldiers slaughtered, and settlers massacred. The empire's iron grip seemed to falter as flames consumed its outposts. It was a resistance Rome never expected, led not by an emperor or a general, but by a mother. Broken yet unyielding, carrying the weight of her people's rage. The legions, so often seen as invincible, were suddenly vulnerable. Entire towns that Rome had proudly built to showcase its civilization were reduced to ash. The earth drank the blood of Romans and Britons alike, and the sky was filled with smoke. For a moment, it seemed as if the empire might be driven out of Britannia altogether. Boudica's rebellion was not merely a war. It was a scream against oppression, a desperate act of survival, and a declaration that Rome could not own the human spirit. Though Rome eventually crushed her uprising with sheer discipline and numbers, they never truly silenced her. Boudica became a ghost that haunted the empire, a reminder that resistance could rise from the most unexpected places and shake the foundations of imperial arrogance. But Britannia was not the only place where Rome encountered resistance that stained its hands with blood. Far across the Mediterranean, in the rocky hills of Judea, another people rose with unyielding determination. The Jews, deeply devoted to their faith and fiercely protective of their identity, clashed with Rome in a struggle that would become legendary. The First Jewish-Roman War erupted like a storm, and what Rome thought would be a simple suppression turned into years of bitter conflict. Zealots, rebels, and ordinary men and women refused to bow. They fought in the streets of Jerusalem, from behind the walls of fortresses, and in the deserts where Roman discipline struggled against guerrilla defiance. The siege of Masada, where hundreds of rebels chose death over Roman chains, became a symbol of ultimate resistance. It was not just a war of swords and shields. It was a war of spirit, faith, and survival against an empire that demanded submission. These moments of defiance revealed the cracks in Rome's seemingly unbreakable armor. The legions were strong, but they could not crush the human will to fight for freedom. Rome's enemies were often outnumbered, poorly armed, and divided. Yet again and again, they rose with a ferocity that shocked the empire. From the forests of Germania, where tribes ambushed Roman legions and wiped out entire armies, to the sands of North Africa, where desert warriors defied Roman governors, resistance erupted in every corner of the empire. Each rebellion was a story written in blood, each a reminder that even the greatest empire is powerless against the desperation of those with nothing left to lose. The darkest resistance Rome faced was not only in the form of armies, but in the enduring memory of those who defied them. The names of Boudica, Arminius, and the zealots of Judea are remembered not because they won, but because they dared to fight when victory seemed impossible. Their defiance forced Rome to reveal its cruelty, its hunger for domination, and its fear of rebellion. History is not written only by the victors. It is carried in the whispers of those who resisted, those who would not kneel, those who chose death over chains. When Rome met its darkest resistance, it was not just a battle of swords and shields. It was a collision between power and defiance, between empire and freedom, between domination and dignity. Rome may have crushed rebellions, but the scars remained, etched into history, whispered across generations. The empire believed itself eternal, yet it was these sparks of resistance that foretold its eventual fall. For no empire, however mighty, can rule forever. The cries of the oppressed echo louder than the march of armies, and in the end, it is the spirit of resistance that survives long after empires crumble into dust.